Four sinister strangers haunt concrete Washington. Unexplained terrors exposed after 30 years, somewhere in the shadows of concrete. Washington, the nightmare that made headlines 3 decades ago, was stirring back to life. Claire could feel the tension crackling in the air like static from a thunderstorm. She was just a single mother trying to keep her head above water amid the chaos of night shifts at the small-town hospital and the worries of raising her son, Jack. But with the 30th anniversary of those horrifying disappearances creeping closer, something sinister hung over their home like a heavy cloak. Jack had changed overnight, his carefree laughter replaced by tense silences. As she looked out into the encroaching dusk, Claire couldn't shake the feeling that 4 shadowy figures were lurking just beyond the trees. Every night after work, she listened to the whispers among neighbors, their curtains drawn tightly shut, as if they were hiding something that she couldn't grasp. It was as if the whole town was holding its breath, waiting for a reckoning. Jack spoke of shadowy figures lurking between the trees' eyes that glimmered and a presence that made his skin crawl. "They're real, Mom," he'd insist. But how could she believe him? The town had always been known for its warmth and community spirit. Yet now, all Claire could feel was an icy chill creeping further into her bones. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Claire's dread escalated to a fever pitch. The children's laughter that once echoed in the neighborhood faded too quickly. Neighbors who had always greeted her with bright smiles now looked away with shifty eyes. Why did it feel like an invisible wall was building around them? Desperate to feel normalcy, she planned family movie nights and cooking together, but Jack was becoming more withdrawn. Her heart raced every time she heard a twig snap outside. It was as if their house was the only sanctuary left in a town haunted by unexplainable fear. One fateful evening, as the shadows began to stretch and yawn into the darkness, Jack didn't come home. Panic gripped Claire like a vice as she dashed through the neighborhood, her desperate cries swallowed by the heavy silence. The air felt thick, alive, vibrating with something otherworldly. When he finally returned, he was pale and shaken, his eyes wide with horror. "For strangers, Mom, they were watching," he whispered, with hollow eyes. The chill that ran down Claire's spine was unlike anything she had ever felt. The legends from her childhood suddenly seemed all too real. For figures, linked to betrayal, always resurfacing to claim their own. She thought of the markings she had noticed outside their home, scratches in the wood that looked too deliberate to be an accident. What were they trying to warn her about? The whispers between neighbors grew louder, and the unsettling truth slowly unraveled before her. The disappearances weren't random. They were connected to something ancient and unforgiving. The line between reality and nightmare blurred when Claire heard the whispers from the woods calling her name, pulling her toward a gathering of ghostly figures on the edge of the darkness. Just as the moonlight illuminated their features, she realized the town had a dark history, and something was coming for her. With terror gripping her heart, Claire braced herself as the shadows crept closer, threatening to reclaim their lost victims. Was she ready to uncover the secrets that could cost her everything? Or would she find herself surrounded by darkness that had finally come to collect? The whispers grew louder, prickling at Claire's skin like the sharp bristles of an approaching storm. She stood frozen, heart thundering in her chest, as the shadows slunk nearer. The 4 figures materialized, their outlines wavering like heat off asphalt, a nightmarish distortion of flesh and void. This was no children's tale. This was something hellish. Jack stood by her side, trembling, his youthful face pale as death. "Mom, they want us, they want me." His voice cracked like a fragile twig underfoot. That realization struck her harder than any blow. The shadows weren't merely watching. They were hunting. "Stay close," Claire barked, instinctively pulling him behind her as she backed away, legs frozen but resolve ignited. The figure's hollow eyes seemed to bore into her, stripping away sanity piece by piece, threatening to drag them into oblivion. Behind them, the town was eerily silent, too quiet. Where were the normal sounds of a Saturday night? No laughter, no chatter, just a suffocating stillness that pressed against her ears. Then, the shadows began to tilt their heads in unison, like marionettes on invisible strings, and Claire felt the urge to run. But where? A flicker of movement caught her eye. An old woman, Martha, from the corner house, emerged into the glow of the streetlight, eyes wild with panic. "Don't look at them," she screamed, voice cracking. "It's too late. They'll take you." Claire's heart sank. She'd heard the old legends whispered during childhood sleepovers, and here they were, horrifyingly real. The stories of families vanishing, taken by entities bound to the earth by some grief of an age-long past. They were collectors of souls, lost in their own eternal hunger. All the kids, Martha continued, voice hitching, they all said the same thing. They said the shadows would return. "No, no, no," Claire muttered under her breath, desperation rising within her. She felt a chill sweep over her as she realized that Jack's fate might already be sealed. "Mama, I'm scared." Jack's voice quavered, and she pulled him close, muffling his cries against her. Would they have the courage to outrun this nightmare? Swallowing her fear, she turned back to see if the figures had followed. But they were gone. Just like that. The air hung heavy with anticipation as Claire strained to hear anything, the silence now a palpable entity, wrapping its icy fingers around her throat. Suddenly, her phone buzzed violently in her pocket. Without thinking, she pulled it out and found a message flashing across the screen. "Come home." Before they do. Her blood ran cold as she read it again. It wasn't from anyone she recognized. The eerie finality of those words cranked the tension to a breaking point. What did it mean? Who sent it? Was this some trap? Across the street, Martha's face twisted with dread as she looked toward Claire, shaking her head violently. "Run. Don't go home." But Claire's instincts screamed otherwise. Home was supposed to be a safe haven, the one place the darkness wouldn't reach them. She had to protect Jack. "Let us go, Jack," Claire yelled, pulling him close as she sprinted down the street, the message's weight lifting itself from the screen into the pores of the night. Shadows began to form on the edges of her vision, creeping back, their hunger awakened again. The chase was on, but where would they find refuge from the broken promises of their own town? What awaited them at home? As they rounded the corner, Claire couldn't shake the feeling that whatever darkness lingered there, it was only the beginning. Would they escape unscathed, or would the fateful sum of decades tie them to the very horrors their town had tried to bury? A distant howl cut through the night, and with it came the answering call that sent shivers down Claire's spine. Something was waiting for them at home, but she was already too late to turn back. They ran like the hounds of hell were after them. Claire's legs burned, each stride fueled by a desperate need to protect Jack, but the weight of dread clawed at her throat. Shadows coiled around the corners of buildings, stretching out like sinister fingers, teasing the edges of her vision. "Mama, why are we running?" Jack's small voice trembled, laced with innocent confusion. "Because I want to let them take you," Claire replied, adrenaline lacing every word with urgency. She glanced back, half expecting the figures to resurface behind them, grotesque and looming. But there was nothing, just darkness dancing in the distance, taunting her with false hope. She veered down an alley, heart racing, breath coming in sharp gasps. "Stay close," she urged, scanning for any sign of safety. Her mind raced. Where could they go? Was there somewhere, anywhere, that could protect them from the insatiable hunger of the shadows? The narrow alley loomed ahead, a jagged gash in the night. The brick walls closed in, shadows pooling in the damp corners. Claire felt a suffocating pressure, like the walls were whispering secrets, warning her of the horrors lurking just outside. She pressed forward, pulling Jack along, fighting against the rising panic. Another howl echoed through the alley, the sound unraveling her bravery thread by thread. Mom Jack's voice quaked, and she felt his tiny fingers grip her hand tighter. "Just a little farther, sweetie. We'll find help," Claire insisted, but her confidence wavered with each breath she took. They emerged onto a deserted street, old lampposts flickering like dying stars. It felt wrong, too empty, too silent. Then, a sound soft, chittering whispers rode the wind, growing louder as they approached. Claire's pulse quickened. They were not alone. The shadows stretched before them, elongating as if hungry for prey. Claire pushed Jack behind her, fists clenching. A sudden chill washed over her, chilling her bones as the whispers turned sharper, more distinct. Claire, Claire, the voices slithered through the air, both mocking and seductive. Who is there? She shouted, but her voice came out weak, swallowed by the oppressive dark. They had to keep moving. They couldn't stop. Over here. A sudden voice, crisp and clear, broke the oppressive soundscape. Claire whipped around to see a figure standing just off the sidewalk, a man, face obscured by shadows. His eyes glinted like two pale sparks, reflecting an unnatural light. "Help us," she cried, hope springing like a well of dammed water. But he shook his head slowly. No, you don't want to be here. Not tonight. They already sense your fear." Claire felt her heart sink. This was all wrong. "What do you mean? Who are you?" "They're coming, and they want him," he said, gesturing toward Jack. "Stay back," Claire shouted, pushing Jack further behind her. "What do you know?" The shadows danced closer, their forms twisting with a life of their own, reacting to the man's words. His voice dropped to a whisper, barely audible. "You may have heard stories. Those tales, they're all true. The shadows they feed. And darkness doesn't just breath, it hunts." She took a step back, feeling the walls closing in. "What should we do?" "Run while you still can," he growled. But just as he finished, darkness surged from around him, swallowing him whole. The last flicker of light extinguished, replaced with a palpable dread that seeped into Claire's bones. "Mom!" Jack shrieked, clutching her leg, voice full of terror. The shadows surged from all sides, the muttering whispers growing into a fierce chorus. "Go! Run!" Claire screamed, shoving Jack ahead of her once more. There was no direction now, just instinct coursing through her veins. They dashed down another street, her heart hammering like a drum in her chest. What lay ahead? Was there an end to the horror? Every corner they turned seemed to deepen the trepidation. A wicked laughter echoed from the night, chilling her to the core. It wasn't just darkness hunting them anymore. Something far worse had awakened, and the stakes had never been higher. "What if we never escape?" Jack whispered, tears spilling down his cheeks. "Don't say that," she snapped, though dread coiled tighter around her throat. Into the unknown they sprinted, hope fading as the figures loomed on the horizon. What awaited them further down this path was a truth Claire couldn't bear to contemplate, and with that, a heavy shadow loomed above them. The darkness never truly letting go, twisting at the edge of perception. They stumbled into an open square, sprawling and silent. The night air was thick, a suffocating blanket that choked out any hint of comfort. Old storefronts crumbled at the edges, their glass long shattered, leaving behind jagged teeth of despair. Dim lights flickered intermittently, casting long shadows that twisted and danced, eerily mimicking the terror in Claire's heart. "Look, Mom," Jack whispered, pointing toward a faded mural on the wall of a derelict building. It depicted a family, faces contorted in joy, yet the colors had bled in the rain, the image warped, much like Claire's own reality. "Are they okay?" "No, Jack, they're not," she muttered, her voice barely hiding the tremor. She pulled him close, scanning the square for any signs of life, any hope. Instead, the chilling emptiness stared back, mocking her. The whispers had transformed feverish and anguished. They haunted her from every direction. She pressed her palms against her ears, trying to drown them out, but they reached deeper than her physical form, burrowing into her mind. "Run," they urged. Run. The urgency wrapped around her like a noose, squeezing tighter with each passing moment. Suddenly, the shadows shifted, coalescing into more defined forms, buckling under the weight of her fear. Claire seized Jack's hand. "We have to move. Now." As they dashed across the square, her breaths quickened, each inhale mingling with Jack's small gasps beside her. They rounded a corner, heart-pounding dread driving them onward. With every step, the laughter grew, discordant and malicious. It echoed off the walls, reverberating in her chest, until she thought she might burst. Over here, a figure appeared in the dim light, eyes hollow and darkened like burning coals, a mere silhouette against the night. Claire hesitated, fear battling with desperation. "Stay close," she hissed at Jack, her breath hitching as more figures emerged from the shadows behind the man. "Help," the figure rasped, stretching a hand towards them. "You need to listen." They are hungry, they want him. Another laugh rippled through the air, sending a wave of ice through Claire's veins. They're just playing with you. Don't listen. Her instinct screamed. Mom, Jack whimpered, and Claire's gut twisted at the anguish in his voice. The figures four now began to close in, their bodies shifting, flickering like faulty lights. Their faces were pale, mouths curved in grins that looked more like wounds than expressions of joy. Run, she shouted, pulling Jack with her. Panic surged as they barreled back into the depths of the night, their tiny feet slapping against the cracked pavement. Which way? Jack cried, lurching to keep up. Just anywhere. Claire panted, desperation clawing at her throat. They veered into a narrow street framed by towering, oppressive buildings. The walls leaned in, dripping with grime and decay, witnesses to unspoken tragedies. Claire's skin prickled with the sensation of being watched. Shadows flickered with every step she took, closing in like a noose, pressing against her. Then the laughter erupted again. It felt close, too close. She risked a glance back, her breath hitching as those haunting figures emerged from the shadows, their movements fluid and unnatural. "We're so hungry," one of them purred, an impossible smile pulling at its mouth. An unholy fear surged through Claire. She pushed Jack ahead, eyes darting, searching for a way out. They stumbled into another alley, the darkness pressed in like a vice, as if even the air was complicit in their persecution. "This way," she shouted, willing her legs to move faster. But as they turned a corner, they collided with a dead end. The wall loomed large, foreboding, devoid of escape. Behind them, the figures rounded the corner, their expressions twisted with hunger. The whispers rose again, drowning out her thoughts. "Join us, become one with the shadows, Mom." Jack cried again, and in that moment, something shattered inside her. She wouldn't let them take him. "Jack, listen to me. We have to climb." With trembling hands, she searched for a safe hold, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm. But she could feel the malice behind them, the darker presence creeping forward. The figures, now fully formed, glided closer, their grotesque features illuminated by the flickering light. Claire's stomach twisted in fear. "What do you want?" she yelled, clutching Jack and moving towards the wall. They answered with a collective noise, a whispering chorus that echoed her despair. "We want your son time stilled." A chilling realization gripped Claire. The walls were closing in, but could she really save him? And as she made a choice in that moment of sheer terror, a voice broke the night, familiar, yet chilling. "Claire, don't you remember me?" With a heart-stopping shock, she looked up, and everything fell apart. Who was this stranger, and what truth did he carry from her past? Claire's heart raced, confusion flooding her thoughts. Beneath the suffocating darkness, the figure stepped closer, details sharpening in the dim light. A face defined by angles and features from memories long buried stared back at her. It was Ethan, her childhood friend, lost to the shadows of time. Yet, as she took in his form, she was struck by the uncanny distance in his gaze, the hollow depth that replaced warmth. "Ethan," she whispered, an involuntary shiver curling around her spine. The world felt heavy, constricting her ability to breathe. "What happened to you?" "It's not what happened to me, Claire." His voice resonated like an echo from a forgotten dream. "It's what happened to all of us. They've never let go." "Who?" she demanded, her grip on Jack tightening like a vice. The figures behind her shifted, their hungry grins spreading wider, exposed teeth reflecting the faint light. "You needed to remember," Ethan continued, his expression warped, both aching and predatory. "They won't stop. Not until they have what they desire." The figures lingered, their breath fogging the air around them, seeping into Claire's very being. The laughter surged again, now punctuated with twisted mockery, filling the space with dread. "Join us now," Claire shouted, instinctively stepping in front of Jack. Shaking, she fixed her eyes on Ethan, searching for guidance, but only finding despair. She would not surrender her son to this nightmare. "Claire," Ethan pleaded, desperation coating his words, "there's still a way out. But you must confront the truth." The ground felt unsteady beneath her. What truth? The shadows encroached, their ravenous eyes gleaming like shards of glass. She glanced back at Jack, his small face pale with terror, and somehow clung to that small flicker of hope, even as fear threatened to engulf them. "What do I do?" Claire's voice cracked. "Remember the games we played," he urged, his image flickering as if the world was struggling against the weight of his existence. They thrive on the light of memories of hopes, find the source. With that cryptic guidance, he faded, a whisper lost to the growing cacophony of shrill laughter. And then, all at once, his words twisted into something sinister, slinking through her mind like shadows in the dark. Find the source. The world around her blurred, a fusion of gloom and danger as she felt the figures pressing closer. No, she cried, instinct dragging her back into the present. She scanned the dead-end alley, looking for anything beyond the oppressive walls, anything that could save them. Mom. Jack whimpered again, his plea slicing through the terror like a beacon. Not them, Jack. Stay behind me. The laughter surged, a wave of madness crashing around them. We're so hungry they advanced, relentless, insatiable. Claire's heart thundered in her ears, a primal urge fueling her thoughts. What games? What memories? And yet, a flicker of clarity sparked in the haze of fear. Jack, close your eyes, she ordered, forcing her mind back to her childhood's sunny afternoons filled with laughter, where she and Ethan had played beneath the bright sky. Tag. Hide and seek. It had felt so safe then. The energy shifted around her. A pinprick of light blossomed in her mind, illuminating a small corner of forgotten hope. We can beat them, she breathed, feeling the shadows recoil, hesitating just a moment. If we play, we can escape. We just need to remember. Jack looked up at her, wide-eyed but trusting in his mother's strength. What do we do, Mom? Count to 10, Claire commanded, feeling the weight of the moment settle on her shoulders. And then run. He nodded, confusion mixed with determination as he began chanting the numbers quietly. The figures froze, drawn in by the ancient game, their wicked smiles curling in intrigue. 1, 2. Jack's voice rang out, fragile yet powerful. Just a little longer, Claire whispered, heart racing as the figures leaned closer, drawn into the children's world as if it was a beacon of light repelling the darkness. But as Jack reached 3, the laughter turned to rage. You're playing a dangerous game, Claire, one of the figures screeched, cracks appearing in their porcelain-like edges. Come on, Jack. Keep going, she urged, adrenaline surging. For 5, Jack continued, his voice fainter with each number. Then everything exploded into chaos. The ground trembled, shadows twisted into monstrous forms as Claire prepared to launch their escape. The walls of the alley loomed, threatening to swallow them whole, the echoes of their laughter drowning the chant of hope. 6, 7, 8. But what awaited them beyond this madness? Would the past reveal the way, or would they succumb to this labyrinth of terror forever? Watch out, Claire shouted, hard in her throat, as the entity leaped forward, its eyes blazing with a hunger insatiable. And the chase began anew. Claire's breath hitched as she felt the earth rip beneath her, a surge of panic thundering through her veins. The creature lunged, dark tendrils spiraling from its form, wrapping around her legs, pulling her down into a desperate void. Shadows hissed at her ears, mocking her, promising pain. Run, she screamed, snapping Jack out of his trance. He stumbled backward, still counting in a wavering voice. 9, 10. The sound of that number hung in the air, a fragile escape that seemed to linger just out of reach. Claire's heart raced, each pulse echoing the ticking clock in her mind. They had to go. Now. Jack's wide, terrified eyes met hers, and together they pushed off the ground. They barreled down the alley, legs pumping, breath jumping between gasps. The laughter chased them, a cacophony growing louder, dissonant, and feral. Each step felt like running through thick fog, every flicker of light blinding her for a moment. The darkness clawed at her back, grabbing for her clothing and threatening to topple her into the abyss. Uncertain turns at every corner left her feeling lost, every shadow pooling with malice as if alive. Don't look back, Claire shouted, her voice shaking, an edge of panic tinging the command. Jack nodded, but she could hear him wheezing, panic clawing at his throat. Mom, I know. Just hold on, Claire shouted, squeezing his small hand tight. We'll find a way. They stumbled into the next alley, a crash of trash cans echoing their arrival. The figures flanked them, always just behind, always hungry. Their black eyes seemed to sparkle with a knowing desire, a wicked anticipation of the terror they inflicted. Join us, Claire, they shrieked, their voices layered. blending into an ethereal symphony of dread. Not today, Claire growled. But inside, the fear coiled tighter. Desperation fueled a fire in her spine. She couldn't let them win. Not while Jack was by her side. Think, Claire. She urged herself, memories rushing through her like a drowning tide. The game's the light. Another alley loomed, darker than the last. She hesitated, the gut feeling that she was being led deeper into the nightmare swirling in her mind. But something pulled her forward, a sliver of hope hidden within the shadows. Quick, Jack. This way, she urged, darting left, hoping the dark figures would falter. The moment they turned, a violent shudder coursed through the ground beneath her. Mom, they're coming, Jack cried, his breath hitching in desperate alarms. Claire's resolve solidified. We're going to find it. The light. A flicker of memory teased at her those childhood days, singing games, laughter bubbling into the warm night. She could almost feel the shimmering light they had once created. Jack, count again. 1, 2, he stammered, glancing over his shoulder. The figures surged toward them, their grins widening, teeth sharp and gleaming in the low light. Your time is running out, they snarled, voices sharp enough to cut through her resolve. Jack faltered, the weight of fear crashing down. No, I can't. His voice trembled, cracking under the pressure. Just trust me, Claire yelled, drawing him close. We can chase them away. Chant with me. As Jack counted, a sudden light flared from the edges of her vision. A soft glow beckoned, distant yet inviting. That's it, she gasped, pointing toward the light. That's where we need to go. 3-4 Jack pulsed, grounding his voice against the shrill wails. But the churning darkness coiled tighter, shadows whipping violently like serpents. You'll never reach it. We'll keep you here. They hissed, breathless with laughter that clawed at her sanity. How do we break free? Claire shouted, desperation choking her words. What game will save us? The game of truth. One figure hissed, lips curling in a grotesque smile. Rediscover your fears. Fears. Claire echoed, confusion spiraling as the shadows converged, spinning a web of despair around them. Yes, delve into your nightmares. They snarled, their gaunt hands stretching toward her. In a moment of ephemeral clarity, realization flickered. The truth, Claire whispered. It's always been about the truth. She could feel it pulse between them, the tangled knots of long-buried fears and regrets. But could she really confront it? Jack, close your eyes again. Hold on tight. The laughter and shadows surged forward, but the moment stretched, the light beckoning even brighter, even nearer. They had to leap into the unknown. With a heart full of courage, Claire knew they had to confront what had been hidden for too long. The past's grip could be broken, but would the truth be their salvation or their destruction? And with every step toward that pulling light, the shadows let loose a chorus of rage and began to weave into their worst fears. Claire clutched Jack's hand tighter, adrenaline fueling her as they bolted through the dark alleyway. The shadows twisted around them like living serpents, their whispers seeping into her mind, unraveling sanity thread by thread. The light ahead pulsed, almost alive, drawing her closer. But the fear thrumming in her chest fought against it, clawing at her rationality. 5-6 Jack's voice trembled, but she felt his resolve strengthen with every count, and it echoed in the depths of her heart. Mom, I feel it. The shadows, they want to get us. Stay focused, Jack. Just focus on my voice. She ordered, her gaze locked on the light. It shimmered, pulling her with that childlike promise of safety. We need to believe we can escape. Count louder. 7, 8 His voice wavered, but determination sparked in his dark eyes as he kept counting. The figures hissed, their voices rising to a fever pitch. You'll never break free. You're bound to your fears. They lunged closer, fingers clawing for them, shadows brushing against Claire's skin like icy breaths. 9. Jack shouted desperately, his heart racing along with the countdown. Now, Jack, Claire screamed, her pulse roaring in her ears. Jump towards the light. They leaped, propelled by sheer will and desperation. But the shadows erupted into chaos, shrieking as they lost their grip. Claire felt the light surging towards them, its warmth enveloping them, promising refuge. For a moment, time suspended in a breathless vacuum. Then, with a heavenly brilliance, they burst through the veil of darkness, devoid of any shadows. Claire landed, tumbling to the ground, dragging Jack with her. Gasps filled the air, unfamiliar yet comforting. They opened their eyes, and to their shock, they were no longer in the haunted alley but standing in the middle of a sunlit park. What happened? Claire blinked at the surrounding trees, their warm hues bright against her skin. The oppressive chill had lifted, but the laughter still rang in her ears, haunting and distant. Confusion replaced fear, and she looked around, scanning for danger, for signs of the creatures that had pursued them. "Jack," she breathed, her heart fluttering as she took in their surroundings. Children played on swings, the joyous laughter clear and innocent. But the echoes of terror lingered like a shadow, creeping just beneath her facade of calm. "Mom, we made it!" Jack shouted, his excitement breaking through the tension that had enveloped them. Yet, Claire didn't share his joy. With a growing sense of dread, she realized something was wrong. The park felt too serene, too perfect. The way sunlight streamed through leaves seemed almost too bright. Maybe it's not over. "This isn't right," Claire murmured, her pulse quickening again as her instincts screamed at her. She spotted a small figure by the edge of the playground. It stood still, its back turned to them. "Jack, stay close," she warned, her voice low. But Jack wriggled free, racing towards the figure. "Look, Mom, it's just a kid." "Wait, Jack, don't," Claire shouted, her heart dropping as she sprinted after him. The figure turned to smile, its warmth froze the blood in Claire's veins. It was familiar yet twisted, a mimicry that chilled her to the core. Wide black eyes gleamed with something sinister, and the laughter returned, echoing through the park, morphing into the voices of the creatures from the alley. "Come play. Join us," they taunted, the shadows now creeping along the sunny ground like poison. "Jack, run," she cried, but it was too late. The sun above warped, dimming, and Claire's heart plummeted as she felt the ground tremble. The park began to ripple, reality threatening to fracture like glass. What had they leaped into? Was this a sanctuary or another trap? As the light flickered and the shadows closed in again, Claire realized the game was far from over. They had escaped one nightmare, but there were many more ahead. "Jack," Claire shouted, panic coursing through her. "We have to find a way out, but how?" The laughter escalated, drowning out her thoughts, drawing her back into the depths of despair. In that moment, she understood that facing their fears was just the beginning. This was only the prologue to a much darker game. The shadows wouldn't let them go so easily. Peering into the darkened heart of the park, Claire knew they needed to act fast before the light was swallowed whole. But in the rising panic, an even more sinister question loomed large. What if the light itself was a trap? Would they play into the hands of their nightmares again? "Jack!" Claire's voice cracked, panic radiating through her. She surged forward, straining against the weight of dread pounding in her chest. But Jack was already captivated by the figure, mesmerized by the twisted, familiar smile that spread across the child's lips. "Mom, look, it's just like the kids from school," he called. Laughter echoed in the air, innocent yet laced with an edge that sliced through her heart. Claire's pulse quickened, tightening around her throat. "Stay away from it," she shouted, but her warning was lost in the cacophony of the park. It felt as if the world around her was both tantalizingly real and terrifyingly unreal. The familiar child turned, revealing a skin marred by shifting shadows that swirled like fog. The features were indistinct, a grotesque parody of what a child should be, its face contorted with glee and something darker lurking behind the eyes. "Come join us. We've been waiting," it sang, its voice echoing like a forgotten melody. Before Claire could snatch Jack back, the child sprawled open its arms like an offering made to a god. The laughter grew sharper, sending needles of ice into Claire's bones. "Jack, run!" she screamed, a deep primal fear igniting her instincts. But Jack stood his ground, both enchanting and haunted by the pull of the figure. "But Mom, it's playing. Can't you see?" Desperation clawed at Claire's mind. A mix of terror and love engulfed her. The shadows, thickening around her like smoke, whispered lies she could barely comprehend, needlepoint terror tugging at her sanity. "Jack!" She lunged forward, her skin prickling with the energy of something dark and ancient that lived in the depths of the park. She felt its hunger, its greed for the innocence they carried. In a split second, she lunged, gripping Jack's arm just as he began to drift forward, entwined in the sickly sweetness of the invitation. The laughter transformed into shrieks, howling like a storm about to break. "Let us play hide and seek." The grotesque child squealed, eyes glinting like obsidian. Shadows flared, casting silhouettes against the sun, seemingly alive, curling hungrily around the living beings within. "No," Claire shouted, wrenching Jack back hard. But as she turned to flee, the ground began to shift again beneath her feet, a disorientation creeping around her like a vice. The park swirled and buckled, the trees shifting like they were being torn from their roots. "Don't leave," the figure wailed, its smile melting into something monstrous, revealing sharpened teeth. The shadows around Claire thickened, swirling in a cosmic dance that blotted out the sun, dragging her deeper into a nightmare painted with surreal colors and twisted laughter. "Mom, I can't," Jack cried, as the darker side of the park pulled at him, its malevolence seeping into his spirit. His small fingers grasped Claire's hand, desperate to hold on. "Hold on tight," Claire breathed, fear coursing through her veins like ice water. They dashed through the chaos, the scenery blurring into streaks of brightness and darkness. Every step felt like it could burst the fragile realm they now inhabited. Desperation rose like a tide inside her. The echoing laughter morphed into whispers of the shadows. "You can't escape, you belong with us." As they raced, Claire spotted an archway in the distance, illuminated with a light so bright it nearly blinded her. It beckoned like hope amidst despair. "There, the archway," she shouted, shoving through the shadows, clawing at them. But then, the ground cracked open, a void threatening to swallow them whole. A wild fear surged through Claire's heart as she watched the monstrous child stretch towards them. "Join us," it wailed, the shadows lunging forward to ensnare them. With relentless determination, Claire pulled Jack toward the light. They leaped, aiming for the beam that promised escape, a stark contrast to the darkness enveloping them. As they soared through the air, an otherworldly scream erupted from behind, vibrating in her bones. The shadows whipped behind them, threatening to seize hold. But as Claire hit the ground, beneath the archway, she realized with horror that the bright light wasn't a safe haven. The light flickered ominously, displacing reality like a camera losing focus. The laughter caught up with them, pouring into the light, morphing with it in an unholy fusion. "We will always find you." Claire's breath caught as the unseen arms of shadow reached for her again, and two paths lay before them, pulsing in and out of existence, one leading back to the grotesque vision of childhood, the other into deeper night. Where would she take Jack? Would they remain locked within the dark game forever? The choice loomed, and Claire felt a shiver of impending doom wrap around her. Would they be consumed by darkness, or was there a flicker of hope buried within the dazzling light? "No more games," Claire whispered fiercely, gazing into the veiled future ahead, uncertainty alighting a fear she couldn't shake. But before she could decide, the world twisted again, pulling at her sanity as the laughter formed into a thunderous roar, drowning out her thoughts. What lay beyond the archway? Would they discover salvation or fall further into despair? The shadows of the park lingered, a constant reminder that the game had only just begun. The moment Claire's feet hit the ground beyond the archway, her heart stopped. The light didn't radiate warmth as she had hoped. It pulsated, cold and alien, each throb matching the frantic beating of her heart. "Mom," Jack's voice trembled, his small hand slipping from hers. She whipped around, panic spiking through her. "Jack!" He stood just outside the archway, eyes wide, the shadows still clawing at the edges of his being. She could see it now. Creeping in the darkness was not just behind them. It lingered in the air, infecting everything. "Don't you dare move," she shouted, her voice fierce and commanding. Jack flinched, his feet glued to the ground as though the shadows were trying to pull him back. Claire rushed forward, weaving between the swirling remnants of darkness that threatened to close in around them once more. But the closer she got, the more distorted reality became. The air thickened, an endless fog that choked her senses. Shapes shifted within the haze, figures that flickered in and out like broken film projections. She blinked, desperate to focus. But in the corner of her vision, she saw them, the faces of children, twisted and grotesque, each sporting the same empty smile that sent chills down her spine. "Jack, hurry!" she cried, terror clawing at her throat. She reached for him again, the shadows' whispers now a cacophony. Join us, stay, play, they pushed at her mind, tugging at her sanity like an angry mob. The flickering figures warped and danced, their voices rising into a chorus of frightful glee. Let us play. Let us play hide and seek. The haunting echoes felt like blades against her psyche, a relentless reminder of the impending doom that lurked just beyond the edges of comprehension. Jack stood frozen, eyes darting between Claire and the encroaching darkness. Mom, they just want to play. A hint of something strange colored his words, a flicker of understanding dancing behind his innocent gaze, something the shadows had planted. No, they don't want to play. Claire's voice rose, breaking. They want you. She sprinted to him, grasping his shoulder as she felt the shadows lurch toward them. His skin felt cold under her grip. The imagery of children morphing into grotesque forms filled her with revulsion, a primal fear clawing at her heart. In that flash, the light beyond the archway dimmed even further, surrendering to the grip of despair. Claire jerked Jack back, trying to pull him away from the pull of the shadows, but it was like wrestling with smoke. The darker figures were holding tight, their whispers growing frenzied. Play, Jack. Come on. You'll have so much fun. No. Claire howled, terror igniting her strength. She felt the shadows stretching, eager to ensnare them, their laughter bubbling into a sinister frenzy, as if the very fabric of the world was bending. In desperation, she cast a glance back through the archway. The world beyond looked eerily calm, a mirror reflecting her unending horror. Could they ever return? The two paths before them became intertwined, each flickering with the weight of consequences they couldn't fathom. Suddenly, something cold wrapped around Claire's ankles, pulling her down. She stumbled, adrenaline flooding her veins. Hold on, Jack, she shouted, fighting against the growing grasp of shadow. Mom. His voice cracked, a sharp edge of terror that drove her to wrench free and stand tall. With a single, fiercely protective instinct, she clamped one hand around Jack's wrist, the other clawing desperately for the now dim light of the archway. The shadows writhed, dark tendrils swirling like a violent storm, pleading with them. Stay with us. Forever. No more games, Claire gasped, defining those words with everything she had left. But as they struggled against the tide of darkness, she realized with horror that the choices were fading. Then, swelling from the pitch-black void, a deep, resonant voice echoed, sending vibrations through her bones. You may choose, but the cost will be high. Claire's breath caught as reality twisted anew. Would they succumb to the shadow or defy it? The air crackled with impending doom. Everything hung in a fragile balance. As the laughter surged around them, drowning out her thoughts, Claire felt Jack's grip slackening. Time ticked away. She had to make a choice. But what awaited on either side? The archway flickered, collapsing her vision into distorted darkness and terrifying forms. They hovered over her, hungry and eager, as Claire clutched Jack's arm tighter, heart racing. Which path? She whispered, despair melding with defiance. But Jack lost his balance, teetering with the shadows, and Claire felt the ground shift beneath her. What would happen next? Darkness rapidly enveloped their fate, and then, the laughter transformed into shrieks, and she knew time was running out. Would her fierce love keep them together, or was this the moment she feared most, the one to sever their bond forever? Claire's heart raced as everything around her twisted and blurred. She stood at the precipice of despair, surrounded by malevolent shadows eager to claim them both. Jack was slipping, his small body leaning too close to the void. Panic pierced through her, sharper than any blade. Jack! She screamed, grasping his wrist harder, feeling the bold determination surge within her. You have to focus. This isn't a game. They're lying. The shadows closed in, their voices creeping under her skin like ants marching up her spine. Join us. Stay forever. The laughter morphed into shrieks that rattled her bones, threatening to devour her sanity. No. She fought against the pull of the dark tendrils wrapping around her legs, anchoring her down. She could feel the ice-cold seep into her blood. The fading light of the archway beckoned her, but it felt so far away now. Could they escape? Or would they succumb to this eternal nightmare? Claire felt her breath quicken. If she were going to save Jack, she needed to confront her deepest fears. Jack, listen to me. Claire's voice was clear and steady. cutting through the chaos like a lifeline. Remember our secret game? The one with the light and the happy thoughts. We can use it. Close your eyes and think of the brightest moments. His wide, terrified eyes met hers, flickering with doubt. But Mom, they don't want us to. I know, but we have to fight them. Focus on the love we share, the fun we had. Count with me, Jack. She gasped, stirring the tumult within. 1, 2, Jack began, but fear laced his voice. The shadows thrashed wildly, urging him to join their disturbed revelry. Louder. 3, 4. Claire encouraged, locking eyes with her son. Now is the time. 5, 6. Their words became a chant, growing louder as the shadows shrieked in fury. Light flickered and fought against the encroaching darkness, pulsing like a heartbeat. Claire felt it. She could almost touch it. The grotesque child figure loomed closer, extending its arms. Stay and play, Jack. It cooed, the pain of innocence wrapped in twisted malice. No, Claire roared, eyes blazing with defiance. Remember the games, Jack. We play for joy, not for them. 7, 8, 9. Jack's voice soared, trembling yet insistent. The shadows hissed, their form wavering. In that moment, Claire could almost see the silhouettes of departed children, faces fading into the twilight, their laughter turning to cries of betrayal. Join us, Jack. We just want to play. They wailed, but Claire squeezed Jack's hand tighter. With one final push, she shouted, 10. The words came out like thunder, a declaration that shattered the suffocating silence. The air shifted, and the sharp, pulsating light surged forward, rushing past the shadows. They howled, twisting in agony as the brightness enveloped Claire and Jack. Running through the pulsating barrier of light felt surreal, like stepping through a dream. They rushed headlong into a kaleidoscope of color and emotion, the warmth of the sun, gentle breezes, and laughter finding warmth in her chest. Mom, we're safe, Jack shouted, disbelief and joy colliding in his voice. They landed in a familiar park, the air sweet and filled with the scent of blossoms and laughter, the playground before them alive with joyful movement. Sunlight danced through the trees, painting the world in golden hues. But as Claire took a deep breath, the shadows still lurked just beyond the tree line, flickering like lost souls, forever waiting. Jack, she murmured, heart still heavy with the aftershocks of desperation. This isn't over. We have to remember not just the games, but the truth of who we are. We must fight to keep our light. Jack nodded, eyes shining with both the innocence of a child and the wisdom of experience. I promise, Mom. I won't forget. Claire wrapped her arms around him, relief flooding through her, but mingling with determination. Their bond would keep them safe, but it would also be their armor against the lingering darkness. Let us take this day and fill it with our light, Claire said, pulling back to look at him. No matter how dark it gets. As they ventured deeper into the park, laughter filled the air, and Claire felt renewed hope igniting her spirit. They would never forget what they had faced. They would share their story, hold on to each other, and shine brighter than the shadows. With every step taken together, they pledged one thing above all. They would never allow fear to shackle them again. They would keep playing, keep fighting, and most importantly, keep loving. And Claire knew one thing for certain: the shadows would always linger. But as long as they had each other, they would never truly fall into darkness. So, don't let this journey end here. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories filled with heart-pounding adventures. Smash that like button now to help feed the algorithm and spread the light. Flood the comments section below with your reactions and theories about this ending. Tell us how you would have fought back. And remember to instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to show your support right now. Don't wait even one more second to share. Let us embark on the next adventure together.